welcome. Thanks so much for attending our session this morning. For the next 15 minutes or so, Nicole and I will be sharing with you how we use Pure to empower our users, but even more importantly, to support our strategic research goals for Houston Methodist. So just real high level, just to let you know what our environment is like. As of 2024, we have 9 hospitals. We're an academic medical center. So what that means is we've got research going on, we have graduate medical education programs going on, and we also have an abundance of patient care. And as you can see, there are 9 hospitals. We have over 33,000 employees, close to 5,200 affiliated physicians. So in the Houston Methodist Academic Institute, of our 842 faculty members, now that was at the end of 2024, we currently have closer to 900 right now. We had over 2,100 peer-reviewed publications. We have 19 academic departments, and we have 19 research centers and research programs. We're a little different in that we are not a degree granting institution. So we do patient care, we do graduate medical education, training, and then we also do an abundance of research. And this is our Pure instance that was established in 2014. Okay, so Lars was our implementation manager, for those of you who are at Elsevier. And so our Pure instance pushes into our public-facing portal. It is, we call it Houston Methodist Scholars. And so we have manually inputted data, and then we have automatically synced data. So on the top side of this image, we have prizes, research units, and cores that are all manually inputted. And so you'll see why it's important that the research units are not an automatic sync. It is manually. And then for the automated syncs is pushed into projects and into experts, and of course into research output. And the research output is pushed, the Scopus data is pushed in on a weekly basis, Tuesday mornings. And then since we are an academic medical center and have a lot of biomedical publications, PubMed can be pulled in, but that's not an automatic sync. It's just pushed in. So the Wayback Machine, back to NAPUG 2024, we were in Galveston and we closed our presentation with what our next steps are in our Pure wish list. And one thing we love, and I have not been paid to say this, but one thing we love about working with Elsevier is that Elsevier is always asking, what's working for you? What is something that is really special that you can do for your people, for your faculty, for your institution? And how can we do this? What's on your wish list? How can you do things better? And how can we help to make that happen? So this was our next steps is we really want to empower peer users, especially our research administrators. And then also, we would really like to be able to report on our secondary appointments. And so a little insight, we were able to accomplish both of these things. So that's what we'll share a little bit about today. Okay, Nicole.
So our talk will focus on 3 examples where we have taken stakeholder feedback and have adjusted the organization of our system. Specifically today, we'll discuss those research units that we manually manage in our system and how we have changed the organization of these to meet additional needs that maybe were not known or weren't needed at time of implementation. So those examples will be 1, balancing varied reporting requirements for faculty appointments, accommodating both primary and secondary appointments in the system, and enabling granular internal administrative reports and separating that from our broader external central reporting structure. So you'll be able to track our presentation through these colors when we're on example 1, orange, green, and blue will be example 3. So we know that all of our institutions are so unique, but what we're hoping you can get from this talk is how flexible the system is and how you can make changes in your system to meet new needs. We've talked a lot about data quality in the presentations throughout the week, and what we try and do is take that quality data and make it as useful to our users as possible, so we're always taking that feedback back and making changes. So we are going to have a poll, 3 poll questions, 1 for each example. So if you could pull out your apps, we're going to go into our first poll question. If you can answer, how confident are you that your current Pure structure effectively serves both your internal operational needs and separately your external communication goals? So I'll give you a few minutes to answer that. "100%, somewhat confident." I'm guessing that's a low N. Thank you, AV. Okay, so we're seeing some confident, some neutral, some not very confident. So we're going to go into an example of how we've been able to increase our ability to do this. So a little background, the Houston Methodist, we do have our academic institute, and that is comprised of a research institution and an education institution. The education institution doesn't have a formal appointment process, but our academic institute and research institute have separate appointments, separate memberships, and this has a few, it's like more for operational needs. And originally on our portal, we were displaying these institutes as separate affiliations for each professor that had multiple affiliations. And we were receiving feedback that externally, for the guests to our portal, this was not very clear, the difference between the academic institute and the research institute. And strategically, for our external communication goals, a consistent name was preferred for identification. So when people hear the academic institute, they know Houston Methodist. Internally, though, stakeholders they need this detailed report. So operationally, there's different importance of whether you're a part of the academic institute or the research institute. As well, faculty are very proud to have many appointments. So I'm going to skip to this slide and go back, but what we did was take our research institute job descriptions, and we created additional academic institute affiliations with the research institute appointment details in the job description of that new academic institute description. And we didn't delete the research institute affiliations, we just back-ended the organization so that we can still have that reporting capabilities on the back end. So this is now what it looked like before, and now on the portal it's very consistent that it's the academic institute, but we're still highlighting that research institute in the job description. And through this solution, we were able to meet those external considerations while also keeping that operational detail in the back end and highlighting those faculty's multiple appointments. Poll question 2.
Okay, poll question 2. So we're wondering, does your institute or your institution have multiple types of appointments? For example, primary, secondary, and honorary appointments. And are they represented in your current Pure hierarchy? Yes, and they're represented well. Yes, but they're not represented well. That's the bulk of everybody, and we do not have multiple appointment types. Okay. All right. Thank you for your feedback. Okay, we can move on to the next slide. All right, so we want to be able to accommodate our primary and our secondary department appointments. The primary departments is, if you're in a degree granting institution or an academic institution, you know that the professor titles is what we're referring to. And in our institution, they're they're nominated, a formal nomination process by the departments, and then that goes to faculty affairs committees, and then it's approved by the board. It's a very formal process, very prestigious process, and it happens 3 times a year. So those are our primary departments. But then the secondary departments, in my opinion, they're just as important, because the faculty receive secondary appointments as nominated by a department, but it really highlights their collaboration. And essentially it is a scientist who's at the bench, and they want to be able to then bring their research into a clinical setting. And so they need to collaborate with their clinicians, and they're in separate towers, and so they might not necessarily know each other. So the fact that they are collaborating with a secondary, in a secondary appointment setting is it's really important. So the way that we have managed it on the scholars' profiles, or peer profiles, is we list primary first and then secondary second. And it's really difficult to report on that. It's just confusing. So we had a few secondary appointments, so we could manually adjust the reports as we're pulling them out. But that's really not sustainable. And the executives are saying, which one is which? How do we know definitively which one is the primary affiliation? And maybe we should just take the secondary appointments off the portal altogether. And we're like, no. This is too important to our faculty. They've expressed that consistently, and so we want to be able to highlight the collaborative work that they're doing. But we want everybody, we want to be able to satisfy both needs. So the former state is, I'm sure all of you know if you've worked with metadata at all, there's the affiliation type, and the choices are student, staff, visiting scholar, honorary staff. So previously we've just created, everyone has a staff affiliation, and then it displays like you see. But there's a lot of manual work on the back end. And so, and then also, as we're trying to report, in the reporting module, it's really not clear which one is primary and which one is secondary. So, just way too much manual work. But our solution is we've decided to take all of our secondary appointments, which is really, honestly, it might be, 20, but it is still significant enough that we want to be able to just pull a report of primary appointments or secondary appointments. So we've moved from the affiliation type from staff, we've switched it over to honorary staff. And then that primary department is within there. You can see in the center screenshot, the primary appointment is right underneath their professor title. And then the secondary appointment, just FYI, the honorary types, it rolls off down to the bottom, and it's not movable. You can't merge honorary and staff affiliations within the metadata. I hope let me know if you have any questions about that. And then when we report on these department affiliations, you can see the affiliation type. In column C is, you can see which one is honorary staff, and that tells us it's their secondary appointment, and then the department that has the affiliation type as staff, that's their primary appointment. And so, the executives get their primary reports as needed, and then the faculty, they have their secondary departments display on their profiles, and their collaborative work is still highlighted in their profiles. So win-win. All right, so you might be thinking, if you do any work with the metadata, you know that there's a set primary button on the portal, on the profiles in the metadata. And since we set this up in 2014, the information that we had at that time was if you set that primary button, it affects reporting in a certain way. And so we've just really shied away from that. If that has changed, that's why I asked the question, David, yesterday about, how would that affect our reporting if we set that button? So anyway, it's a continued conversation to see how that would affect our reporting. Okay, next poll question.
Okay, our last poll question. Is your institution faced with challenges in providing detailed granular reports for internal unit administration while maintaining a simplified hierarchy for external stakeholders? Give a few minutes. Good choice. Okay, awesome. Okay, so we're seeing that this is a little bit of a challenge. Colleen has come up with a really creative way to answer this problem for us, and we use it all the time now, so I'm excited to share that with you. So back to our hierarchy, digging a little bit into it further. Underneath that academic institute, we've got different types of organizational units, such as centers of excellence, departments, and institutional programs. And below that, we may have departmental programs. And this is all approved by a process, approved by executives. These all have governance committees. It's very official. And this is how our central administration sees the hierarchy and how they see our organization. However, organizational unit administrators, they have different requirements from their chairs for how they need to internally manage their unit and how they need to report on their units. And these vary from unit to unit. We see some reporting on cost centers, some reporting on medical specialty, and even in our transplant and surgery departments, they want to be able to report on organ type. So we have a few different stakeholder considerations here then. We've got our unit stakeholders who are overseeing these sub-organizations that are important for their unit level management, but then we've got our central and external stakeholder considerations where units are perceived as these singular entities, and the detail is not as much needed. And then that would just be too much to put on an external site. So how we have addressed this is we've taken everything that's an official organization in dark blue, and these are public on our organizational hierarchy, and they are highlighted in the portal. But we've created back-ended organizations, which we call teams, in our organizational hierarchy, and these are not visible on the portal. But these allow for us to provide those detailed reports that are really important for those the unit level management. And I'm going to end with a cool story about, so Colleen had mentioned at NAPUG that we had this goal to empower our users. We really wanted people to learn more about Pure, learn about the power of Pure. And so we were meeting with one of the research administrators for our HEART COE, and he was stressed, having to work with his chairs, and he was asking us for, I think he was expecting just one list of research publications, and then he was mentioning how he has to do so much work to then go map it to all the researchers and their cost centers, and that's when Colleen thought, oh, well, we can just create these organizations in the back end of Pure and provide you your reports broken down the way that he needs. And we didn't pay him to say it like Colleen was saying earlier, but he literally said, I feel so empowered. And that's, I think, when Colleen and I knew we had succeeded at our goal from last year. So, yeah. Well, thank you for your time today.